Hi everybody, it's me Willow and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm here with another fun video for all of you guys to enjoy. Today I'm going to be breaking down the new film from Jane Schoenberg, which is Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. I absolutely adored this film. I am slowly debating on its ranking overall in my 2026 ranking of the films I've seen. It I really think it's like second, first place possibly. I need to see the film one more time. I've only seen it once, so I feel like if I get to see it a second time, I'll really be able to cement if it's actually my favorite film of the year. I really want to rewatch 28 Years Later Bone Temple as well because that was one of my favorite films of the year for such a long time until the Odyssey came and like knocked it out of the water. And of course, I love the Odyssey and the grandness of it and everything that's able to achieve and the emotion I'm able to like bring out from seeing this epic journey. But there was something about Camp Miasma that I was just able to connect to, and this vision that Jane keeps bringing out in all of their projects, I really adored. I saw the TV Glow. I saw that when it came out in 2024, and I love Jack, and I'm also a big fan of Justice as well. So I really love that film with the actors and getting to see Jane, just slowly evolve. I really do have to see I Meet You at the World's Fair, or I think that's the first film's title. I have not seen it, but I really should sit down and give it a watch because I know all of these are kind of about like surveillance culture and kind of voyeurism in a way. And I'm a big fan of like the voyeurism genre. And I feel like this film, Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma, does a really interesting spin on kind of like dissociation and voyeurism and sexual exploration. And I really did love this film. I had no idea what to expect from it, and you definitely kind of have to release a lot of your like normal going movie experience when watching this. It's very highbrow, but I appreciate that Jane is just willing to go all out there and try something different, kind of lean into some like Lynchian vibes and just full on go experimental and express, beauty and sexual fluidity and just like exploration. I think right now, in a very conservative leaning time, a time that is very much leaning away from sex and sexual exploitation, I am, yearning for this content. And I think Jane is definitely one of these voices. And I'm just so happy that they're able to, like I said, continue to evolve and work on projects that are not necessarily like trans focused, because they themselves said that they don't want to be just like the trans filmmaker. They want to, be the filmmaker. They want to branch out and be seen as this incredible vision in film. And I think Camp Miasma, is very meta and really plays on this like fear and trope that Jane has. And I just love exploring it with our characters, Kris and Billy. Before I fully dive into my spoiler review, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the post notification button so don't miss out on any of my future content. I cover pop culture, film, TV reviews. I'm also heading to the Toronto International Film Festival in just a few weeks as a member of the press. So I'll be giving you exclusive front of the line footage of that film festival and films that are yet to be released, many awards contenders. So I am super excited about that. And I do awards predictions as well. So if you guys are interested in all of that, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the post notification button so you're always notified when I post on the Willow Steel channel. It's going to be a really busy next couple weeks with TIFF for sure, and I have lots of other reviews coming out. And if you guys always want to see something specific, just leave a comment down below because I read every single comment and I try to reply back to them as well. I'm very appreciative of your suggestions and also all of your guys's, compliments and praises. Obviously, that is very kind to see, all my hard work if you guys enjoy it. If you guys do, make sure you hit the thumbs up because all of your interaction really pushes me out into the algorithm so I can meet other like-minded folks just like you guys. So thank you guys so much for really interacting with the video. I'm so grateful. I'm also on all the major social media platforms. You can find me on Letterboxd, Serialized, the Awards Expert app, TikTok, and Instagram, all at Willow D. Steele. I do post regularly on all of these platforms, update my awards predictions, post random stuff on TikTok and Instagram. I'm just always around logging on Serialized and on Letterboxd. So if you want to be in the know with the Willow Steele, make sure you're following me at Willow D. Steele on all of my social media platforms. So thank you guys so much for supporting me. I'm just so grateful. But I want to know what you guys think of Camp Miasma. Let me know in the comments down below because this was just such a fun film. Like I said, I really didn't know what to expect from it. I went and got to see it in 35 millimeters, so how Jane intended it to be seen. And I saw it at the Lightbox in Toronto, and I love that before they start the film, they put a little like screener before, they do the trailers and stuff like that, and then right before the film's about to start, they do TIFF, really wants to preserve, film, and this presentation will be presented in the way that the filmmaker intended. Very much this like Nolan coded language, and this was the same thing with The Testament of Anne Lee as well. Like I'm so grateful I got to see that in 70 millimeter, The Brutalist as well. So of course, this is I highly encourage, these films to be pushed out in different types of formats, not just digital format, but in 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter, in IMAX, 70 millimeter IMAX. Like, I am grateful that we are trying to push this, you know, medium forward, and I really do think it added a whole different level of graininess and this kind of like horror, like nostalgic feel, because it's definitely playing on like slashers, kind of like Friday the 13th, Sleepaway Camp, and all those films I feel like had a lot of like these grainy, film projection type feel to them. And I definitely think being shot on the 35 millimeter, getting to see that, you have that come straight clear into the film, and I just feel like that is such a perfect way to be able to exhibit this film. Makes it even like more meta, especially when you're getting to see like digital cameras used within the film itself, and then it was shot on 35 millimeter. Like, it's just like so like, ooh, like messes with your mind, but like in the best way possible. And getting to see, the bits of the grain in the film kind of come out through the process of getting to watch it. I just love when that happens, honestly. Like not the perfection and like smoothness of digital, but the authentic feel of the graininess of the projection film. I love it. So I'm so happy I got to see it in 35 millimeter. If you guys have the chance to, I highly suggest, seeking out a 35 millimeter screening if one is in your area. So I love the opening credits of this film, again, giving us a very nostalgic feel, but also is a super useful narration tool. We get a really fun opening credit song as well from the composer Alex G. It's called Welcome to Camp. And as we're listening to this song, getting to see the opening credits, we are kind of going through this history of the Camp Miasma franchise. So within this story, there's this really famous series called Camp Miasma. Again, kind of a play on Friday the 13th, Sleepaway Camp, those slasher films, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all of that sort of jam. 70s, 80s coded, not 100% sure when it was filmed. We do get the time jump idea that Billy Presley was 24, I believe she said, when she was filming, pretending to be an 18-year-old. And then in like the current timeline with Kris, she's in her like mid 60s, I believe. She should be about Gillian Anderson's age. So, we can kind of defer like, 70s, 80s when this film was like shot and kind of started this franchise. So we have Billy Presley as the final girl for the first film, and then they have, a reboot that she doesn't come back for. We get to see like the news clippings for that. They end up doing a third one. She still doesn't come back for that. And then they continue to do them and they kind of get more like crazier as they go, like kind of like the Scream, like H2O, and the other horror films where they end up going to space, or they do like a sibling or something comes back as the villain, or all these different crazy spin-offs, and just trying to keep this franchise going on this like nostalgia bait, and just knowing that in the past it's made money and it's been a critical hit, so like let's just keep living on this zombie franchise is what they kind of coin it as. So I love that because I've never heard zombie franchise before, but there's definitely, been a lot of that going around in the last couple of years. I would say, I think like before COVID, but I do think COVID really did like asturbate this idea of nostalgia with a lot of these like streaming services. Specifically, I can think like Disney Plus, like coming about and really just like honing in on the past nostalgia of Disney and Family Channel and all of their properties that they own, and really just like cashing in on that. And you can think of like other properties like HBO Max with Warner Brothers. They tried to make the Dune Prophecy show, and then even with like Lord of the Rings, they with Amazon MGM, they've on Prime, they've tried to make the Lord of the Rings series, and like they have their fans, but nothing's like really stuck, and it's never grasped the same, level of success as the original film. So this franchise, it was very beloved, but over the years, it's definitely kind of like dwindled in its success, and, being recontextualized. A lot of people, kind of in the modern day and this like woke era believe the Camp Miasma franchise is actually like very transphobic as well. So that's another, element kind of being brought in, Jane's, the trans director storyline, but I think she's like playing it very on the nose here, which I think is like perfect. Like I love that Jane is like willing to just like call out Hollywood in the industry, and the fact that like I also watched their Ringer podcast on the Big Picture with Sean Fennessy. Jane, Gillian, and Hannah all did an interview with Sean, and I thought it was a really well done interview. And Jane mentioned that, after I saw the TV Glow and also Trip to the World's Fair, they were, critically acclaimed, kind of the Sundance director, and that's very much what Kris, Hannah Eimbender's character, is kind of like portrayed as in this film. But, Jane was brought into these certain, Hollywood executive meetings and what was proposed, but for them to remake the Leprechaun series, to do a reboot of that. And they said they thought maybe like the Hollywood execs thought the transness would have canceled out the other controversy with doing a reboot of Leprechaun. So like I love that Jane's able to completely just use this in the film through Kris kind of as like her voyeur. So I love it, just playing it completely on the nose. And so this intro introduces us to Kris, who is this, Sundance director who's got this critic acclaim for kind of remaking Psycho, but from the perspective of the shower curtain. Again, another kind of voyeurism, perspective idea. And again, that idea is much more elaborated on later in the film with Kris, and what her desires and her sexual, revelations kind of end up giving her later in the film. But I think it's really funny because, Kris is also saying that she wants to, like, Hollywood really wants an origin story for Camp Miasma. So they picked her again because she's very known for having this like queer identity and queer lens. And again, Camp Miasma franchise has this, controversy of being transphobic. So again, with Jane, this meta perspective of, oh, does one thing cancel out the other? They got Kris to become the director to reboot the Camp Miasma franchise in order, to try and push back with this blowback of what could happen if they do reboot it. So I just think it's like super smart, and it's just like executed so well. Like Hannah Einbender is just so fabulous. I know of her, but I've not seen Hacks. I really should watch it. It's all done, and I'm sure I would completely love it because I'm so into Hollywood and just like celebrities and that type of media. Like I love Hail Caesar, so I feel like this would be something I'm also kind of into, even though it is like more comedic, because I know Jean Smart is like just full on like comedian in that. And of course, Hannah Einbender, like her iconic, like that one scene where like her staff, they've been like getting like lobster rolls for lunch and she's been like paying for it all. Like that's iconic. Like I really do have to watch the show in full. But Hannah Einbender is just fabulous in this role, and I love getting to see her, in a film kind of branching out from the silver screen onto the big screen. So Kris is very much kind of like meek and insecure. She is very like bold and passionate. Like I just really felt like I saw myself in Kris, and I think this is a big reason just like why I really connected with this film. Like I saw the TV glow, but there was definitely points of disconnect in that film for me, and maybe certain levels of confusion. I do think I could probably learn more from it on another watch because I have not seen it since the first time I saw it. And I feel like, with age I might understand a little bit more as I mature. But I just loved Camp Miasma. I just thought Kris, like, I just really relate to her trajectory throughout this film, and getting to see her more of this, like, kind of meek person, but with a lot of, like, goals and wanting to strive for big achievements and wanting to prove herself is just something I can, very much relate to. So seeing her go on this quest to try and find the original final girl of Camp Miasma, when her, all of the execs are really like pressuring her to get this original like origin story out so they can like start working on it, and all she wants is to like connect to this series in order for her like kind of creative juices to start flowing. So she tracks down Billy Presley, which is played by Gillian Anderson, who is, oh my goodness, absolutely stunning in this film. Of course, Hannah Einbender, gotta give props to her as well. I will talk more in depth about her a little bit later and just how beautiful she is. But Gillian Anderson, ooh, I love her. Love her. Of course, I've seen lots of Gillian Anderson, X-Files, Sex Education, The Salt Path, lots of other films as well that she's been in. Hannibal, like she's just an incredible actress. Again, much more kind of like focused on the silver screen, huge in television, picks and chooses her big screen projects. And I feel like, with Sex Education, and then also with her two books that she's released in the last couple of years that are kind of like essays of like sexual fantasies and explorations that women, across the world have, experienced. And she put her own, essay in there as well. Like, I feel like teenage sex and death at Camp Miasma is the perfect next step for Gillian in her career. And I feel like we get to see again kind of this like mirror foil voyeurism, almost like you are seeing Hannah Einbender, who is like such a mirror for like a younger Gillian Anderson. Like Gillian Anderson posted this like carousel on Instagram a couple weeks ago, kind of to promote the movie. And it was like one picture would be Hannah Einbender, and then one picture would be her in like the 90s during like the X-File era. And then it would go back to Hannah, and then it would go back to her, and just like how uncanny their presence are and how much they like kind of just mold into the same person. And then getting to see, of course, like this mature beautiful woman of Gillian Anderson playing Billy Presley, who's kind of like this recluse, and they're very much playing on the nose of her being Norma Desmond from Sunset Boulevard, just kind of this like really creepy, like, oh, people don't know too much about her. Is she kind of like off her rockers a little bit? Especially with the fact that we discover that she's living at the abandoned campsite where they filmed the Camp Miasma franchise. She was able to buy this like campground lot, and she said that she really likes the quiet there and that it's just like out in the nowhere. And she fully goes and says, well, somebody has to be here waiting for Little Death when he returns. And Little Death is the villain of the Camp Miasma franchise. And he is like the whole origin story behind this guy is that he was a camper at Camp Miasma, and that his parents were hermaphrodites, and they would raise him as a boy one day and then raise him as a girl another day. And this, like, I guess, created, gender confusion. And the child would end up, sleeping in the boys' cabin on one night and then sleeping in the girls' cabin another night. And they would, change swimsuits. One day they'd be in swim trunks, and then the other day they'd be in a bikini. And because of this difference, they were bullied endlessly at this camp, and then they were drowned at the camp. And Little Death, was born out of this, and he wears, I'm using he, him pronouns, but I guess I could probably maybe use they, them. It's never really like super um, distinguished. Like, again, this like kind of like trans idea, like, I I do really enjoy it because I do think it's kind of playing like it's not like fully fleshed out, because it's trying to play on this trope of like a 70s, 80s, idea of what, gender confusion villain could have been like. So I'm not really like critiquing, how it's not like super fleshed out, but Jack Haven does play the villain, Little Death. And they use they them pronouns. So maybe when I'm referring to Little Death, I should use they them pronouns. But I should like research that as well and see if Jane or Jack has spoken on that. But I think I keep saying he, but I think I'm going to actually refer to Little Death as they them, just going on, further in this conversation. But I think it's interesting that Little Death wears this like vent. Again, kind of another voyeurism image, because you get to see them through this kind of like little hole throughout the killing, and the vent also kind of like swivels around and like turn to the other side if it gets like too bloody and gory on one side. So I really do like the design of Little Death. They're also kind of in this like American Psycho plastic painting jumper suit thing, and I believe that they're nude underneath. You do get to see Little Death kind of in the nude in their origin, in bits and pieces throughout this film. But again, Jack Haven coming off of I Saw the TV Glow. I also love them in Atypical. So it's great to get to see them as they also kind of go through this transformative time of finding their proper gender identity, similar to Jane, that they're able to like kind of go about this and express it in a creative way through I Saw the TV Glow and also here with Camp Miasma. So love that. I always am super appreciative when the artists, kind of collaborate together and are able to bring this very truthful and real story to the screen in a very like creative way. I love that. I really do think I get a lot of out of that from this. So this idea of little death, is little death actually dead? And Billy is kind of like teetering on, oh, like, is she like kind of like a little like mad and thinking that Camp Miasma and Little Death, all of this is real? Or is she just like, like fucking with Kris? And, she is. She's kind of joking with her. They kind of do a couple jump scares where they're in this like old cinema on the Camp Miasma like grounds, and they have a projection of the original Camp Miasma film, and we're getting to see, this big climax moment where the main character, played by Billy, is having like her virginity taken away by this one character in the film. And this scene ends up, really evolving throughout the course of this film. And you get to see another kind of like voyeurism point, and Kris is really like stuck on Billy's expression in this scene, like her eyes, like she just has this look in her eyes that she just like does not know how to describe. And we get kind of like a little jump scare at that moment, and then they connect to have dinner, and they have KFC. I think it's hilarious because Billy's like, "Oh, I didn't even ask, if you're like a vegan or anything." And I think it's like very obvious that Kris is like definitely a vegan and that she doesn't like fried chicken, but she likes Billy. So she goes, "Yeah, of course I love fried chicken." And then Billy goes, "I hope you like dipping sauces." And she has this like very thick kind of like country accent on, I can't remember where they said she was from. Wisconsin, maybe? I can't remember. I don't know if it was Wisconsin. And they go, "Do you like dipping sauces?" And she replies back, "I love dipping sauces." And I think this is one of my favorite scenes in the film, because later on we get another kind of like meta moment where Billy tells Kris that, the original Camp Miasma and why it did so well was that it was about flesh and fluids. And this dipping sauce scene, like, oh my goodness, the like sexual allegories in this is incredible. Like, I love this. It was hilarious. Everybody in the audience was laughing so hard. It just played up so like sensual, like such a romantic little dinner of them having their KFC fried chicken with their with their dipping sauces right in front of the fireplace. Like, I thought that was hilarious. Like, I love that scene. Like, it was just so unexpected, but so like creative, and I knew exactly what Jane was going for with that scene, and I thought it was super effective and really brought our characters even closer together. So, of course, like the sexual tension is really building, and we have kind of like this interview start to evolve with Billy and Kris. And Kris is trying to really get Billy on board to join her Camp Miasma film, because she just thinks, having the final girl come back, after all this time would just be, really what the franchise needs. And I think, actually like what she really wants, because later we find out that she kind of had like her sexual awakening when she was like 8 years old, and she was watching the Camp Miasma original film, and she saw Billy at that climax moment and the look in her eye, and she didn't exactly know what it meant, but she know that it was kind of like, something like stirred up in her. And I think all of us, at a young age kind of have something like that happen to us. And, as you evolve, like, does it stunt you a little bit? And I think seeing this with Kris, like, I just really relate to her perspective of how she has like this deep passion and interest for film and creative, and she really dives deep into like the queer lens and horror, and the idea of like relationships and sex is just like not in her vicinity at all. And I just hit it right on the nose, I just I just 100% relate to Kris in that way. So I love getting to see Billy try and like open her up, and they, kind of reveal, the idea of flesh and fluids and desires and what is Camp Miasma actually about. It's the idea of being scared so much that you could have like the best orgasm of your life. And I just think this film, is just so interesting because there's this like really great YouTube essay. I know this like YouTuber is kind of controversial, but I love this essay. It's about like horror and queer villains and just how like um the queer community really relates to the horror genre and how a lot of like socio-political ideas can be pushed through horror. And I think, Camp Miasma does it so perfectly with this meta, idea of like us being inside the movie, watching the movie, and Little Death is actually like watching us like be in the movie. Like it's just like so crazy like how this all like goes about. And with all of like the horror elements as well, it's just like nothing is like super actual scary. Like all of these deaths are just like super over the top, and everything in this film is like super practical. Like you get these like actual painted sets. Like I was watching the film and I was like, are those actual painted? Like are we going back to like 70s, 80s, George Lucas, Spielberg, like Ridley Scott going back to painted backgrounds. And then I saw they literally did a miniature. So they're like on, I think, a sound stage, and then they have a miniature of the background painted, and it's like set up in the lens where it becomes like the background. Like, so incredible, all these practical effects, and then the horror elements are all hyper CGI, which just like I feel like is the cherry on top, just like really playing on this horror genre. And like are you supposed to be scared? Not really. Like you're supposed to understand that this is, more than just a horror film. It's us kind of poking fun at the industry with the fact that we can't evolve past these origin stories and sequels and prequels, and where are the original ideas. And often, we will go through like a certain time where things get analyzed and it's deemed like woke, and you think the series is transphobic, but then in a couple years maybe that community ends up reclaiming that franchise as their own. And I think this is a very intellectual film that's often kind of talked about as well with Kris and with Billy as well. And Billy, like she says, Camp Miasma is just about flesh and fluids. It's not about intellect. And she's telling Kris that she is overthinking it too much and that she just needs to let go and release and relax. And is she talking about her filmmaking, or is she talking about her sexual explorations? I think she's talking about both. And I think as the film really progresses and we go to that one point in the film where Billy and Kris sit down and are actually watching the projection of Camp Miasma, and we're seeing Billy, do her art of like the little death, kind of like symbol, like with like the vent. She has all these different art pieces that she does, and they're all like the exact same pattern of the little death vent. And it's just interesting to see her kind of like fully dive into that and be like very uncomfortable while she's watching the film. But we get to see Kris like fully immersed in it. And, later in the film, we get to see that Billy reveals that that moment in the film was actually happening. It was actually real. And she, actually did lose her real virginity in that moment. And it was like very unpleasant. And she did not have a good time while she was doing this. And she like actually like left her body while she was experiencing this. And when she left her body, she was then brought into the perspective of seeing her body, having sex with that guy. And she kept going back and forth, like the images were super clear, and she realized that she had been in like Little Death, like she became Little Death in this perspective of kind of voyeurism. And he has this like kind of like rod that he kills people with. Again, kind of another like penetrative, phallic image here in this sexual explorative film. And Jane also talked about her Freudian influences in this film as well. So I think that's also another way I think I'm going to like relook at this film is from like a Freudian textual um like lens the next time I see it, because that's kind of how Jane approached the film, was also through a Freudian lens, and having this idea of her, on the bed, she's being penetrated by this guy. She disassociates from this moment where she's being having the power being taken away from her, and she projects herself into Little Death, into that voyeurism perspective, takes the rod and penetrates both of them, giving her this release of the biggest, best orgasm she's ever had. And yeah, like it's very like interesting. I don't know if I 100% fully understand it, if I'm being honest, but I don't think I need to fully understand it. I think it's just about the idea of feeling that moment of that voyeurism and taking full control out of a situation where you feel like the control has been taken away from you. So that's kind of how I kind of interpret that scene. If you guys have a different way of interpreting it, please let me know. I'd love to hear different perspectives about this film. I think that's what's so great about this film, is that it also can kind of be interpreted in different ways. But we have some beautiful like sexual moments between Billy and Kris, a couple different ones. One when they're like lying on the carpet and Billy's really trying to get Kris to relax, and Kris just cannot do it, and she kind of like seizes up in the moment. But Billy's just like so beautiful, gives her a lot of like aftercare, gives her a blanket, tells her that she has nothing to be embarrassed about. And then they like kind of slowly, just fall more and more in tune with one another. And we see, Kris kind of start opening up about her actual real sexual desires and how she thinks that they're kind of reductive and, not like good representation for women, or a queer person like her, but like her real sexual desire is to be very kind of like scantily clad and running slow motion through the forest while the killer is running behind her trying to kill her. And like she finds like a lot of sexual gratification through that, which I loved that perspective. I thought it was super funny. And then when she actually gets to do that later in the film, when Little Death is revived from Billy and also from Kris, and then Billy's like, here's your moment, girl, like go, and she like strips, and this is like funny too, because later or earlier in the film, we see that she has all these different layers on. And then when she goes to like run, through the forest and live out her vision, she like takes off all these layers. It was super funny, and again, like another great metaphor of her stripping, some layers and becoming free and being willing to like open herself up to what she actually wants. I skipped over this other scene in the film where Kris has a Zoom call with the movie execs, and she they want like the origin story, and they're like, okay, tell us about the origin story. And she just keeps going on about how she's gonna get Billy signed on, and they don't know who Billy is. They're like, she's not Jamie Lee Curtis. Kris, you do know that, right? And she's just like, but she is what is needed for this film. And then she just kind of goes on this rampage about how they are in the movie and that there is a hole at the bottom of the lake where Little Death comes from. And he has always been there. He was there before the movie was made. And he's down there kind of in this like womb like blockbuster, if you can have it like that. And he's down there and he's watching movies and he grabs Camp Miasma off the shelf, and it kind of also like evolves into teenage sex and death at Camp Miasma, and has Gillian and Hannah's face on it, and it's like a VHS system, and he pushes it into this like VHS system that's very much looking like, a vagina coated like visual. And Kris is just going on and on about how they are the ones watching us, and we are the movie that Little Death is watching, and Little Death is being entertained by us. And of course, Little Death is the French expression for orgasm. So again, another kind of like play on words with this sexual exploitation. And this she kind of has this whole freak out in the Zoom meeting, and I love the execs. They're just like totally taken aback by this. And we see, this idea of us being in the movie, and Kris and Billy being in the movie that Little Death is watching when she gets to do her slow-mo run. And then she meets up with Billy in the cabin, and Billy's made it super romantic with all these candles and rose petals, and they kind of reenact Billy's sexual experience in the first Camp Miasma film. They're having sex and they're going about it, and I think it's like a great moment, because how I interpret it is both Billy and Kris have expressed that, they have blocks when it comes to sexuality, and that, their hands get tired, they don't want to masturbate, they don't want to do these things. And I think when Kris is saying, I don't want to die, like, don't leave me here to die, Billy, I don't want to die, I think it's actually her saying, like, I don't want to come, I don't want to orgasm. And when Little Death comes in and lets, penetrates them and lets them orgasm, have that beautiful moment, I think it's them, getting that release. It's as simple as that. Like, I think the gore and the blood, and on top of that is just, like the artistry of it, right? Like, but at the end of the day, it's about letting go, relaxing, and having a partner that you trust, that you can open up with, explore your fantasies about, and, at the end of the day, get that orgasm together. It's as simple as that, honestly. And I think with them waking back up, after they've been killed by Little Death, and they're fine, and then they go to the gas station together and they're covered in blood, and you see the cash register guy, he's kind of like, oh, looking at them like they're weird, and it's like, oh, are they looking at them weird because they're covered in blood, or because it's two women romantic together. And Hannah Einbender mentioned this in the Big Picture podcast, that she kind of viewed the ending as this expression of queer love being out in the open, and that there's always somebody out there to make them another, make them an outsider, and that this blood, kind of represents them being the other in that moment. But that's not going to let them not, it's not going to stop them from being in love and being romantic and caring for one another. So I thought that was perfect. I just love this film. And the more I talk about it, honestly, the more I love it. I also love like the allegories with like the candy and stuff as well, like the sweet tooth, all of that. I think that is so much fun as well. And I love the scene where Kris, she's watching, I think it's like the sixth Camp Miasma film, because she was at the gas station earlier before she ends up meeting with Billy, and she finds the Camp Miasma number six, and she takes it back to her hotel room, and she asks the front desk guy, "Oh, do you have a DVD player?" And it's very kind of like hush hush, like, "Ooh, like, am I doing something naughty? Like, am I gonna watch like, like a porno or something? No, I'm just gonna watch Camp Miasma." But again, kind of playing into this idea of, ooh, like, are my sexual, desires wrong? Like, is it weird to be like projecting this and like wanting to be open about this, or am I going to hide in my hotel room and watch it? And I also love when she's watching it and she has all the candy scattered around her her bed, and she has like the chocolate covered raisins and she pushes them all into her popcorn. I thought that was super fun as well. I also think the music in this film is awesome. I know there's a Counting Crows drop that a lot of people have been loving. I also love the final song in the film. I Love You Always Forever from Donna Lewis kind of closes out the film. I thought that was such a fun song. We also have No Ordinary Love from Sade as well. We also have an REM song, like lots of great songs amongst the Alex G composition as well, which is like super fun, and I really do like Alex G's work in this film. So the costumes too, production design, like I mentioned, a lot of like the painting was hand done, and I think the costumes are so much fun, like really giving like the Norma Desmond look to Billy's character with like the head wraps and the different like fur coats and the makeup as well, kind of like this twiggy makeup. Of course, all of the different makeup with like the blood and the gore, like Kris's final look with her just like her kind of like crop top and her underwear, and then she's completely covered in this blood is so fun, so cool, such a vivid image. And then with Billy standing beside her in this like long kind of like cloak, and she's also like covered head to toe in blood, like such a fun look. Like I mentioned, the design for Little Death, I really do like that design as well. I think it was pretty fun and unique and something I haven't seen before. Also, kind of like a cliche, it's definitely not like super original. Like, it's definitely playing on, something catchy of a super villain right in a slasher horror film. So I thought it was funny how they did it, but I also loved like how they swing it, the vent kind of back and forth whenever there's blood on one side. I thought Jack Haven did a great job with the portrayal of Little Death. So yeah, super fun. I just had a lot of great time with this film. I think it's just like super funny, and there's other like, little cliches throughout the film as well. Like we have a little polyamory couple with Kris and her female partner, and then her female partner has a male like bisexual partner named Thor. I thought that was really funny. Kris's female partner, I'm assuming that they're female. They might be non-binary. It is played by Jasmine Savoy Brown from Yellow Jackets and Scream, and they do use she/they pronouns. So I'm just like getting these pronouns wrong in this video, and I deeply apologize. I hope you understand that I'm correcting as I realize as I go through this video, but they are in this like polyamorous relationship, which is again, kind of a very cliche, tropey version of it, where it's very obvious that Kris, has no like sexual like interest, but wants to be, in a relationship with a woman. So they're in a relationship with Jasmine Savoy's character, and I'm assuming they get their, sexual satisfaction and maybe some like emotional satisfaction from their partner Thor, because I don't think Jasmine Savoy, the character, gets any sort of satisfaction really from Kris. Like it does seem like they do care about each other, but it seems like, Thor is very much in the way, and Kris doesn't seem like she likes Thor at all, but they do like just let it slide, and I feel like that's not actually how like a polyamorous relationship should work. If you have multiple partners, I feel like you should probably approve of all the partners. But I've not been in a polyamorous relationship, so let's not get down that road. But that's just my outsider perspective. But yeah, I thought that was great. Another little Hollywood trope type thing. I think Sarah Sherman, she's been in so much stuff lately. She was in Roommates earlier, and now she's in this film, and I really loved the scene where she was like talking to Kris because she's her agent, and we see Sarah like walk up to this gym while she's on Bluetooth, and she meets up with her friend, and they go onto a court, and then they start playing squash while she's in the middle of talking with her client. Like, I thought that was another great scene, you know, also super on the nose, Hollywood. I just thought it was great. But yeah, I think overall my favorite scene was probably the dipping sauce scene. I really loved that scene. I also just really love the scenes with Kris getting to open up to Billy. I think probably the scene where she's like fully opening up on the carpet about like her sexual desires and saying that she thinks, oh, she's dirty and it's repulsive and it's very embarrassing to tell her sexual desires, but then, you know, she fully does. And then we get to see like the movie montage kind of happen with them being put into the movie and the slow mo and all of that build up. I thought it was fantastic. So, yeah, let me know what you guys thought about teenage sex and death at Camp Miasma down below in the comments. I would love to hear all your guys' thoughts about this film. I do think it's deeply complex, and I'm sure a lot of people who go and see it might not connect with the film and might think it's, you know, weird and different. But at the end of the day, I think weird and different is so much better than just the same old. And I love that Jane is willing to just try something new. And maybe if everything doesn't, you know, 100% click, and, you know, there was one or two points of the film where I'm like, so, like, what exactly is happening? That doesn't actually lose on the storytelling or the overall arc of the film. Like, it actually just makes it even more like interesting and creative. And I just thought this film was like really brilliant. And like I said, the more I talk about it, the more I'm really loving it. And I feel like on a second watch, I hope I love it even more. And guys, this might be my number one film of the year, honestly. I just feel like I like it just more than the Odyssey. Like, I feel like the Odyssey is so much grander, and I love the scope that Nolan goes for. But I just think what Jane is able to achieve, you know, on this budget, like a fraction of what Nolan had, a fraction of the contacts that Nolan has, and what Jane's able to achieve here, and just also like an original story from Jane, whereas the Odyssey, you know, is an adaptation of Homer, an adaptation of Emily Wilson's translation. Like, just I think it might has to go in first place for 2026 ranked, guys. Like, it might just have to. So, if you guys enjoyed my review, make sure you guys hit a thumbs up, because thank you guys so much for interacting. It really pushes my videos out into the algorithm so I can meet other like-minded folks in the cinema loving community. If you guys like pop culture, film, TV reviews, I'm going to Toronto International Film Festival to cover as a member of the press. So I'll be giving you guys exclusive upfront footage of films that have yet to be released this year. I'm also doing other awards predictions videos. I have one for Best Picture out right now, and I will be updating it and doing actor predictions as well, and director and screenplay, stuff like that along the line. If that sounds stuff that you're interested in, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the post notification button so you don't miss out on any of my future content. I do post here frequently throughout the week. I am in the middle of a new job and a move, so things will be a little chaotic over the next couple weeks just with posting as I transition through this new chapter. But after that, you know, in September, hopefully things are going to level out and I'll be on much more regular posting basis, and we'll have the TIFF content and awards content, and it's just going to be such a busy and lively time here on the Willow Steel channel. So make sure you are a subscriber and have post notifications on so you never miss out. Thank you guys so much for all of your love and support. I am on all the major social media platforms at Willow D Steel. You can find me on Letterboxd, Serialized, the Awards Expert app, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on all of these platforms at Willow D Steel. Give me a follow. Give me a like, comment. Let me know that you guys are coming from the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much. I'm just so grateful for this beautiful cinema loving community. I just love when we guys can, you know, discuss these films and TV shows and all this pop culture goodness. It's just honestly my passion, and I love doing it so much with you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching my video, and until the next one, keep getting lost in cinema. Bye!